We'll begin the Plan Committee meeting of Akron City Council. We do have, I believe, one item that's up for a public hearing this afternoon. Sorry? We have one item that's up for a public hearing this afternoon, correct, Mr. Antonucci?
That's correct.
Yes, we do. So the procedures for a public hearing is that we'll ask that those that are here to speak on this item be sworn in by a representative of our law department. After that, we will then conduct a public hearing and ask that those that wish to speak in favor stand up and testify before the committee, and that those that are against testify as well, or if there's questions. After the public hearing is over, we'll then ask the committee for if they have any questions, and then all council. We'll basically repeat that procedure this evening at 7 o'clock. After that procedure is over, we will then ask the committee to make a recommendation on the ordinance or the legislation. At this point, though, I'd like to ask Mr. York to go ahead and swear in if there's anyone here wishing to speak at today's public hearing to be sworn in.
Is anyone planning on speaking this afternoon at the public hearing? I don't see anyone, sir.
Okay, Mr. York. Why, thank you for doing your duty. The first item that's up for public hearing is, well, I guess there's only one, but it's an ordinance approving the 2019 Consolidated Action Plan, including application certifications for the Community Development Block Grant, the Home Investment Partnership, Emergency Solutions Grant Programs, authorizing the mayor or his designee to enter into related agreements in operation and terms of the programs. Ms. Tomic.
Good afternoon, committee chair, committee members. The City of Akron's 2019 Annual Consolidated Plan prioritizes the budget for the expenditures of Community Development Block Grant Funds, the Home Investment Partnership Program, and the Community Solutions Program. All three of these programs are actually funded through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The goals of the program are to assist primarily low and moderate income persons to improve existing housing, develop affordable housing, expand economic development opportunities, and to aid the homeless. The 2019 allocation represents about $6 million of community development block grant funds, which is a 0.1% increase from our 2018 allocation. $1.3 million of home investment partnership funds, representing approximately a 8.1 decrease in funding from 2018, and $515,000 in emergency solutions grant program funding, representing a 3.2% increase in 2018 funds. We are also budgeting and anticipated about $500,000 of program income that we anticipate coming in throughout the year. The 2019 plan among recommendations includes continuing our Akron Housing Partnership Program through the LED program, also continued new housing construction, public improvements including splash pads at Joy Park and Patterson Park, supporting our nonprofit community housing development organizations, supporting our community development corporations, supporting a minor home repair program throughout the city of Akron, assisting local emergency and transitional shelters throughout the city of Akron. This also includes homeless prevention and rapid rehousing, supporting our community services program, and the Beyond the Table Grant Award program. Also supporting our recent Great Streets Initiatives program and other economic development related activities. The consolidated strategy includes a narrative describing the housing needs of our low-income folks, homeless families, and others in special needs. This represents a one-year budget for 2019, which effectively started January 1 of 19 and will be ending on December 31st. The application is due to HUD on June 14th, 2019. Therefore, we request passage by June 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to procedurally at least ask if there's anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the proposed action plan, consolidated action plan for 2019. Anyone here wishing to speak in favor? Anyone in favor? Anyone? Anyone wishing to speak against? Anyone against? Anyone? Okay, hearing none, we'll close the public hearing portion and we'll open up to questions from the committee. Mr. Swirsky.
community development corporations receive funding through this?
They apply for, we have an application out for funding right now. Our
Okay.
request for proposals, they are due July 15th of this year.
Okay, and is that, we are already funding some community development corporations. There are other ones that are applying?
We,
Well, yeah.
can you please repeat your question?
Are we already providing some assistance to neighborhood-based community development corporations?
So for CDCs, there is a round that was submitted and completed in 2018. So we released the 2019 application in end of May, and those are due July 15th.
Okay, and that is a matching?
It is a matching program.
So a group that's starting a new community development corporation has to, what is the grant for? How much? What is the limit?
It's
or
up to $100,000.
up to 100,000?
Correct.
Okay.
And so it's an option. They could do public service activities, they could do economic development activities, or housing activities. So it's up to the CDC as to how they choose to utilize those funds.
Okay, so if a group starts a CDC, does the paperwork, we're not really helping to provide seed money, we're matching if they raise money from another source.
There is about 25% of their request can be for operating dollars for that CDC, but a match component is required per the HUD guidelines as well, because we have to report match to HUD.
Okay, would there be some room to amend that so that a group that's just starting, which has no money but some track record in the community of providing service or providing assistance in some way, the city could help start some CDs. It's not just match what other people are already doing. Could that be amended?
The match component, we would, like I said, we have to report that to HUD. So their allocation that we give, when we enter that information, we have to indicate what their match component is.
Okay, so HUD is demanding that it only be a match.
It's yes, a match, yes.
And Helen can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe it's a dollar for dollar match, right?
I think it's a 1-for-2 match. So for every, if they would ask $10,000 for the CDC grant, they would have to match half of that, which is $5,000.
Okay, so if a group could raise $5,000, they can get
$10,000.
$10,000?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so they have to come up with $5,000 first to be considered worthy of support from the city. Is that correct? Are we trying to rule out people who don't have any money to?
Well, I think because of the federal guidelines. So, you know, as you all know, when federal dollars are involved, they're not the easiest dollars often to get in terms of fulfilling all the requirements. So we try to do a lot of partnerships with, you know, nonprofits and even banks and so forth to try to get that seed money. So we definitely want to work with people and get, I'm very sympathetic to the situation that you're articulating, that there are people who, if they're just starting out, they're kind of in a catch-22. They can't, you know, they need money to get started, and we will work with them, but we are under obligations via HUD to, you know, be in compliance with the federal guidelines on matching funds.
Under obligation, I mean by law?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there's HUD guidelines that specify.
Is there
all of that.
recognizing the limitations, is there something that the city could do to help groups start?
Well, as I said, I think
Yeah.
trying to work with partners that can provide that seed money and that funding, and I think for a lot of organizations, I mean, there are partners in the community that are willing to work with us on that, so we're
We've
happy.
done that with some of them, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to continue to do that.
Correct. I mean, the first, and Helen might want to expound on this if she wants, but the first round of funding has gone well, and There's some neat projects that are being implemented in the neighborhoods with those CDC grants, and we expect that this round is going to be equally successful.
Okay.
I'm good.
Good, okay. Samovian?
Thank you.
Can some of this seed money or this match be in kind?
I don't remember what we put in the application. I would have to look at that. A part of it has to be at least cash, but I have to look at the application because I don't remember.
Okay. And the fiscal year for these funds is?
For the CDC funds or for the consolidated plan funds?
Both.
So the consolidated plan funds are actually January 1, 2019 through December 31st, 2019. The CDC funds, we're anticipating those will be January 1 of 2020 to December 31st of 2020.
So we're talking about a calendar year in both
Correct.
cases. What about the ones that we've already given out?
Those varied. Those, the ones we gave out probably were sometime April, May 2019, and then going through a year after that. We're trying to get everybody on a calendar year.
So regardless of when you started this year, it's going to end December 31st? Or are you talking about a full year?
There'll be a whole year, yeah.
So
yes.
they'll stagger into the next year?
Correct.
And then after that, it'll be a calendar year?
Correct.
That's the plan. Okay, thank you.
I'll make one more. Other
Let me see if anybody
Yeah,
else
yes.
first. Anybody else in committee have questions? Mr. Neal? Oh, okay.
Well, just a comment, I just, was asking those questions. I'd like to see us find a way that we aren't simply matching, maybe we are limited by HUD laws, but where we're not simply matching if there's other funders come forward, but that we're helping to initiate and lead in terms of community development corporations and other programs that get community development block grant money. So there's a difference between leading and initiating and simply matching what other sources, foundations, or others are doing. And in that way, we'll be less dependent and less driven by philanthropic foundations more. We want to be leaders in this area.
Sure, well, we definitely take that under consideration and appreciate that comment.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Swirsky's point, what I'd like to do is if we could get an idea of how these funds were used over the last 2 years, who received them, and then how we proceed with this shift, folks being serviced this year, because I'm assuming, is there going to be a shift in the way the dollars are distributed this year?
In terms of
You're talking about for the CDCs in particular?
Correct.
Okay.
well, when we released the applications, we indicated eligible projects as is allowable through the community development block grant dollars. So as I indicated, that could be housing rehabilitation, it could be public services, it could be economic development. That has not shifted from 18 to 19, and I do not anticipate that shifting in the future.
Well, I mean, this is my point. I don't know, every ward is not represented by a CDC,
Correct.
okay? As those being elected, taking Mr. Swirsky's point, we want to be a leader in this. We want to make sure that if a ward isn't covered, or if work is being done within that ward, that it meets the goals and objectives of that ward. If the CDC is not of that ward, how can they know what the goals and objectives are? So that we can, one of the things that would help is to look at best practices. I know for years when Eandacy was and they still are, the flagship CDC, we had looked to them to sort of like provide mentorship in best practices to other CDCs. Now we've had some new ones that are trying to get up and started, that have, you know, implemented some different things. I don't think we've ever had an opportunity to see what's the best practice, what has actually worked and hasn't worked in different areas, what have been the challenges. You know, and I'm looking here, clearance and land assembly and housing development. That right there is an area of serious concern for me. You know, but we've never had a chance to talk about best practice and look at how certain areas are being adversely impacted by the practices that we have right now. And before we distribute the money, I would like for us to have some understanding on what it is, what our goals and objectives are in the different areas. You know, I hope we're not asking to take the vote on this today. I'm hoping that we could take some time so that we understand what it is our goals and objectives are to achieve, and make sure that if there's something that we have to put in here, because I know maybe something has changed. I don't think we have any rules and guidelines for CDCs, for an organization to be a CDC. At least I know when I was introducing some folks in my ward who are in the process of developing some, and they asked, well, what's the application process? At that time, the city didn't have an application process, so we didn't have any formal process for, you know.
Mr. Segedy?
Yeah, sure. Just a couple things for context. So I appreciate that comment. I think, you know, on a couple different levels with CDCs, in one sense, anyone can be a CDC. There's no official requirement. You don't even have to be a 501c3. Now, to get our funding, we've got some stipulations about, because we want to have some due diligence in terms of who we're giving federal funds to, and that's one reason for the match. But I think for context, it's important to point out that until last year, there was no program to fund CDCs. So I'd be remiss if I didn't say that this is a great step forward for the city, that we had no program to help or assist CDCs prior to last year. I think the partnerships that are emerging are very fruitful for the neighborhoods. As was stated in response to your question, Councilman Swirsky, yes, I think we can always work to make the program as flexible as possible under the rules and make those funds go farther. But I also wanted to point out that at 3 o'clock in Budget and Finance, there'll be a presentation on some of the changes to the neighborhood partnership program. And so there are, I think, a couple other funding mechanisms to assist CDCs and folks in neighborhoods that want to do good projects that might be a little bit more nimble and maybe easier to access funding than through this larger grant program.
And Mr. Neal, I just wanted to follow up in regards to your comment. In the 2019 round, we did tweak the program a little bit. We did ask that the CDCs focus on either our Great Streets initiatives or looking at our policies within the Planning to Grow Akron initiative. So we are asking that they focus their programs through to those policies that we've adopted.
Again, excuse me, if I may finish, please.
Okay, I was just going to tell you my intentions on the legislation, but you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Like in the best practice, and this came out in some of the discussions that the Beacon had when they were going throughout the city. People said they wanted to have more ownership in their government. If you have a CDC, one of our stipulations should be, if a CDC is operating in a ward, they should have a citizens advisory group that they bounce ideas off of. You know, because you've helped me in this process. I mean, I had a CDC that was at once very viable. It served Ward 3 and Ward 4 at one time. That was WinCo. But WinCo no longer resides within Ward 4. So, but they still receive funding because they do some work within the city. Well, again, if we're designating them as the CDC for Ward 4, and folks can't even drive to get to them within the ward, that's problematic. So I want to know, what are our stipulations? What are we putting in place to make sure that a CDC that is serving a certain population area, because especially when we talk about community block grant dollars, those are federal dollars that come in because of the citizens that live in the area, they should have a way of making sure they can have input in that CDC. That CDC should not be able to dictate to them. They should be able to work hand in hand with the CDC. And that's what I want to make sure that we have in place, those kind of practices. Thank
Very
you.
good. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and, I'm going to ask for a recommendation. We beat this up plating. I'd like to ask for a recommendation. Well, actually, we'll have another public hearing this evening, after which, as Ms. Helen Tomic had mentioned, we will take 1 week's time on this, as it is due immediately after next Monday to the federal government, this application, and that's exactly what we're approving here. So with that, I'm going to just go ahead and move on to the rest of the agenda. And request time on the balance short of any questions or comments. So we'll now move on to the new list of legislation, of which item number 3 just had the public hearing. Item number 4, authorizing conditional use to construct a parking area at 43 Pruitt Boulevard.
Wait, we'd ask this be referred and advertised for public hearing.
Motion to refer.
Motion to refer.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Ayes have it. 5, authorizing conditional use to establish a child daycare business center at 1335 West Waterloo.
Is to refer and advertise for public hearing.
Very good. Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. 6, authorizing conditional use to establish a child daycare business center at 480 Lovers Lane.
Is to refer and advertise for public hearing.
Motion? To refer? Anyone? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. 7, authorizing conditional use to establish a child daycare business at 7474 Ardella.
Is to refer for public hearing.
Is there a motion?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. 8, authorizing a conditional use to establish a U-Haul sales at 199 Maslin Road.
Is to refer for a public hearing.
Is there a motion?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ayes have it. Authorizing, number 9, authorizing conditional use to construct a monument sign at 1481 East Market.
To refer for public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Ayes have it. 10, approving the historic designation of the Astor Avenue Business District as a historic district.
So we'd ask to refer this for hearing next week.
Okay, is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Ayes have it. 11, approving the sale of vacant city-owned land pursuant to the city's A Lot for Little program in order to facilitate the productive reuse of the property and in furtherance of the Mayor Horrigan's objectives of activating underutilized spaces for the benefit of the community and reducing the cost of the city and the taxpayers and maintaining vacant lots.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. This is our standard lot for a little. It'll be sold to the neighboring property owners at our standard price. It'll be green space.
Questions or comments? Is there a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. 12, approving the donation of certain city-owned land to the state of Ohio to facilitate the completion of the State Route 8 Bridge project.
Yes, ODOT has approached us and asked for some various pieces of parcel needed for the new right-of-way for the Route 8 bridge.
Very good. I would like to respectfully request 1 week's time on this particular item. Is there a motion for time?
Motion for time.
Second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Nobody voted. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. 13. Authorizing the purchase of 429 Wellington Avenue for the CSO Rack 1011 Storage Basin Project.
Yes, this would be a purchase of a vacant property directly across the street from our basin. It is a negotiated value.
Very good. Is there questions or comments? Is that a question? Okay, Mr. Neal.
Yes, Lewis's. Lewis, Marlene Lewis.
Okay. Very good. Consent agenda, okay?
Yes, that'd be
Is
fine.
there a motion for consent?
Motion for consent.
Is there a second? All those in favor of consent agenda signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it. Mr. Clerk, did you catch that? There's one abstention on that item. I believe. Very good. 14, accepting various rights-of-way documents for the certain properties to facilitate the completion of Frederick Vern Odom Boulevard right-of-way improvement.
Yes, the city's undertaking some change in the right-of-way there. They're basically going to make larger corner roundings so commercial vehicles can turn through there. These are both appraised value.
Very good. Questions or comments? Ms. Mobian?
This is the intersection where McDonald's and Church's Chicken and all those?
Yes, one of these is the Church's Chickens, and if you drive by there, you see it running over the curb and hitting the interstate
So is this
sign.
going to make it wider?
Yes, they're going to make a larger turn radius there, so
Okay.
keep them off the curbs and sidewalks.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion for consent? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. The ayes have it. Thank you. We're
Thank
adjourned.
you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we could, I'd be happy to sit down. Maybe you can let me know, your thoughts and, yeah, I wasn't able to, I had a conflict on Friday, so I wasn't able to make it, but, yeah, why don't you give me the back row on kind of what your thoughts are, and then, I did let James know about the meeting, and I told him that, I was gonna probably reach out to you anyway and follow up, so it's a perfect time, and I was kind of wanting to get where you were on it, so, okay, sure.